And just as you can paint on location when you're outdoors or you're visiting a special place, or, it's a season that you really want to reflect upon, you also can paint on location indoors too. And one of my favorite things to do is to go to a cafe, sit down with a nice hot cup of coffee, maybe a sandwich, maybe some dessert, and do a little bit of sketching while I'm just sitting and waiting for my food, or maybe I want to actually sketch my food. Sometimes I like to do that. Sometimes it's a little hard, especially if it's hot food and you don't want to let it get cold, although that can encourage you to paint really, really fast. So today I'm just sitting in a cafe and I want to do a little bit of observational painting, and I got myself some coffee here. So I'm just going to go ahead and set things up, and I'm going to do a little bit of still life painting while I'm here. So just right as I was sitting down, I noticed that the candle, it's kind of almost burned all the way down at this point, but I really liked the way that the light was reflecting off of the coffee mug. And so I wanted to see if I could capture that. And I also brought along with me one of the little pumpkins that I got from the garden center. And actually, I bought a whole bunch of pumpkins, but this was the only one I wanted to bring inside with me. And I got myself a muffin, and now I'm ready to sit down and just be comfortable, take some time to do a little bit of observational sketching. And just like when I was in the park, I'm really looking for things that are just immediately right around me, not necessarily things that are grand and amazing to paint, but just kind of what's right in front of me, maybe what catches my eye. So in this situation, it was just the way that the flame of the candle was kind of reflecting on the coffee mug. And so that's really going to be the subject of this sketch. I'm not trying to do a realistic painting here. I'm not trying to capture everything about the scene. I'm not even trying to be particularly careful with the drawing aspect of this, although mugs are always a challenge for me. So I really want to just focus on the light and maybe a little bit of the color and keep this very simple and casual. Of course, I don't want my coffee to get super cold while I'm painting. And so it's really good to approach observational painting from that standpoint of just having one very clear objective that you're going to focus on and letting other things go. So maybe don't worry about having the most perfect drawing. Don't worry about the composition being anything special or wonderful, and just focus on, what caught your eye in the first place. So again, with any painting, I'm always going to approach it with some of the basic fundamentals of painting. And right now I'm just kind of splashing around some yellows, some oranges, some reds, because I want to capture the light of this scene more than anything else. And I want to hopefully create the essence of that flame reflecting on the coffee mug, the way that it's sort of illuminating everything around it. And so as I'm working through this, I'm trying to think of how I can kind of create that impression. So I know that I need to keep the source of the light, so the flame, very bright and light, and maybe even leave that area with some of the white of the paper just showing through. And then I need to somehow reflect that on to the mug without just, trying to paint the reflection of a flame onto the mug itself. And so I need to have a nice dark background. I'm keeping my colors extremely simple. I think I must be like on a yellow, orange, and violet kick today, because it seems like a lot of my sketches have gone that direction. And it's probably just this time of year, being fall. It's kind of, those are the colors that are sort of hitting me at this moment in the mood that I want to capture. So just kind of go with wherever you're naturally inclined to go, and just keep your eye on the main focus of that process. So I wanted to reflect some of that yellow and orange onto the mug, and then other parts of the mug, even though the mug is white, I have to actually challenge myself to paint those shadowed areas on the mug, the form shadow of the mug, a little bit darker. So here you can see I'm gradually adding a lot of darker value to that mug to help create that illusion of illumination by the candle flame on just one part of the mug. and everything else is going to be very dark, very neutralized, so that the bright colors in the candle are really the focal point of this little sketch. And that is basically it. It's something that you can do just within, 7 to 10 minutes. And hopefully your coffee won't be too cold. You can see that I no longer have steam coming out of my coffee here. All right, so now I'm going to do another sketch of my friend's food. And it's just a little bit of dessert and coffee, and I set it over by the lamp that's off to the side. And again, I want to try to focus on maybe that same theme of light and illumination and how it's kind of creating a lot of interesting colors on the cake itself, because the cake has like a kind of a white frosting. It's a tiramisu cake, but the light of this lamp is very warm and it's kind of illuminating the cake in a way that I found very interesting. And so I just wanted to spend a little bit of time exploring that as well. Of course, working very fast so that she can have her cake and not have to wait for me to finish painting it. So that's a really great way, I think, to approach painting, is just to keep it very simple, keep your focus on it very simple. So whether you're exploring, maybe you want to explore light and shadow, and so you're going to do just a monochromatic sketch where you only paint the shadow and you leave all the light parts white. Maybe that's your focus. Or maybe your focus is just on capturing, the colors in the scene, and so you're not focused on form or light at all. Or maybe you're like me, and what I really like and what I find myself really drawn to is the way that a light source can illuminate something and really change the way that we perceive it. So it can change the colors that we perceive on it and kind of create almost an ambience that I find very interesting and something that I want to explore, and also something that I know that I like to look back on later as I'm flipping through my sketchbook, kind of looking for inspiration. So I think that whatever you want to focus on, just keep it very simple, keep it very concise, and throughout the process, try to keep your mind focused on that so that you don't get distracted by all the other details that are around you. Because again, painting from life, painting from observation, there is always so much information there. And this is a really great practice in simplification and focusing really on what is most important to you. And this will help you even when you're painting from photographs, because a lot of times with photographs, we get really wrapped up in the fact that we have this still image and we can see so much detail in there. And so we almost feel obligated to paint all of it. But I think that the more observational painting you do from life and you start to see how simple a painting can be while it's still very effective is going to help you approach painting from photographs a little bit more casually as well. All right, so now we've finished our desserts and our coffees, but I really want to just capture one more thing. As I said before, I'm really interested in this whole idea of urban sketching. It's not something that I've personally spent much time doing, but I really like looking at other people's urban sketches, and I'm always kind of fascinated how they can create such an amazing composition based on very simple drawing, kind of, the wonky lines. And so I decided that being in a cafe, and this cafe in particular, because there's so many interesting lights and fixtures all around it, it's one of those cafes where there's just like couches and armchairs and there's board games all over the place. So it's a really nice environment. And I just wanted to spend some time capturing the essence of this place without it being too complicated, without it being too realistic. So I'm starting out with just some very basic perspective lines, and it's by no means accurate to actual life. It's just a starting point, and I'm definitely not an expert in perspective drawing, but that's the nice thing about sketching, is that it doesn't have to be all about that, and you're just naturally going to get better at doing things like that by kind of, even if you have very fundamental framework like I do with perspective drawing, where you kind of determine where the vanishing point is and you draw outwards from that, the more you do it, the more you're going to develop a really good intuition for that process, and you're only going to get better over time. So whether it's drawing, whether it's painting, really anything in your life, the more time that you spend just doing it and not overthinking it, not feeling intimidated by it, the more you're just going to build that knowledge into your muscle memory, into your hand-eye coordination, and it's going to start to come more naturally to you and feel a little bit more intuitive and carefree. So again, what I'm going for here is just I want to capture the essence of this place. I really like all of these kind of lamps that are hanging down from the ceiling and lighting the place up. I love that the ceiling is this really nice deep blue and everything else is kind of very warm colors. So there's a really nice contrast built into this place. It's almost like a primary color scheme where we have this ceiling that is blue and the wooden floor is kind of a nice warm red. The lights are yellow, and so there's just a lot going on in here. And another thing too is that I really want to practice just simplifying all the objects in here. So there's lots of chairs, lots of tables. As I said, there's sofas and armchairs and little coffee tables all over the place. And so I don't want to spend my time focusing on those. And so really, other than maybe drawing in a few specific things like the couch and some of the chairs, everything else I just kind of want to let go and just be kind of vague objects in the distance. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to perfectly draw every single thing in here. And just like with my urban sketch of the garden center, I'm going to spend probably more time doing the drawing than actually on the painting itself. And I'm going to keep my colors very simple. Of course, starting out with the lights because that is where the values are going to be lightest, where the colors are going to be brightest, and I'm going to work outward from there. So again, keeping everything very simple, remembering as I go through the painting process that what I really like about the color scheme is that it is very much a primary color scheme. So I'm really exaggerating a lot of the yellows, the reds, and then when I finally get to the ceiling, I'm going to try to keep it a pretty straightforward, simple blue, but maybe just a little bit dark so that we have some contrast with all the lights. And it's not perfect. It's not something that, I'm think is the best painting I've ever done in my life. However, I have gone into this cafe and painted it so many times, and definitely this is an improvement over the other times that I've done it because this is a challenge for me. And so anything that is challenging to me, but also something that I really want to do, that I have that desire to do, I know that I need to just spend some time working through the problems that I have with it, and gradually over time, I'm going to see an improvement. And so a sketchbook is really all about that. As I've said before, it's about experimenting. It's about making mistakes. It's about doing paintings that don't quite turn out the way that you want them to, but every single time you try it, you get a little bit closer. And I just know that if I keep going to this cafe and trying to sketch it from different angles, from sitting in different spots, maybe focusing on different things like, the whole scene like I'm doing here, or if I focus on something a little bit more narrow, eventually I'm going to get it and it's going to just be built in.